Hello everybody! Sorry my video for last week was late. I had to give the presentation Monday night, which means that I did nothing but practice all day Monday because anxiety wouldn't let me do anything else. Yeah. Because I had to give that speech, presentation, whatever, I thought that this week's video I would talk about presentational speaking, essentially how-to speech. I know I have videos where I've talked about my anxiety, public speaking anxiety, and kind of how to cope with that, so I'll link any of those kind of videos that I've done in the past down below. Without further ado, how-to speech. I'm taking a class this semester and it is presentational speaking. We have to give so many different types of speeches, it's ridiculous. And if you're like me and you have severe social anxiety, well, okay, borderline severe social anxiety, like I probably should be medicated, but I'm not, oops. It's hard, but there are ways to make it easier. So I'm just gonna go through things that I think helped me and could help other people, because it is, regardless of who you are, what you do, chances are you're gonna have to speak publicly and have like a public speaking engagement, so it's a part of life, unfortunately. The first thing that you can do is plan ahead. I started coming up with ideas as soon as I knew we were going to have the assignment. I don't know why I snapped. So just plan ahead, kind of map out what you're going to say before you come up with any, like, find any sources or anything, like figure out what you want to talk about. Within that topic that you're going to talk about, like what subtopics do you want to talk about and discuss. If you can, choose a topic that you're interested in. So we got to choose whatever topic we wanted to discuss and speak about to the whole class. So I chose record labels because I think it's really interesting that they get a ton of money. And if you can't do that, find ways to relate the topic that you're discussing to things that you like. It makes it easier to talk about. You kind of know a little bit more about it. You're more willing to do the work for it because you're actually interested in it. I've done speeches where I've had no interest in what I was talking about, and they did not turn out nearly as well as the ones where I was actually interested in what was discussed. Practice, especially with your visual aid. Our speeches are timed. So essentially what I did on Monday was I'm one of those people where even if we can't have the whole speech in front of us, I have to type out exactly what I'm gonna say so that I don't screw up as badly. And I had my visual aid done, and so I practiced a couple times just holding the speech in my hands. And then once I ran through it with that a couple times, I got my computer out, I got the presentation up, I got my little note cards out, which, if you can, put cues on when you need to change your slides on your note cards so that you don't forget, because I would have forgotten. And practice with everything, multiple times. You need to get all of the flubs and like the nonsense just kind of out of your system, and then just have a few clean run-throughs and you should be good. And that's what I do. It's worked for me in the past. Sometimes it works better than other times. If you have anxiety, like me, I find that if I can, I don't go on the first day of presentations. I like to see what other people are doing, and it makes me feel a little bit better, / I kind of know where to go in the direction of my presentation. But on the day that I do go, I don't wait very long to go. So this speech, I was I went on the third day, and I was the first to go on the third day because sitting there only makes it worse because you can't do anything about it. So go as soon as you can on the day that you're presenting so that your anxiety doesn't get the chance to like build and build and build and build and build. Especially if you're like me and sitting there doing nothing makes the anxiety worse. Whereas the whole time leading up to that, I was sitting there practicing my speech. So go as soon as possible. It took me a while to figure that one out. I used to wait as long as I could, and then the anxiety just got worse. And another thing that helps is dressing well. If you dress like a schlupp, you're not gonna be perceived as well by the audience, and you know, you're clearly not taking yourself seriously, and so it just, dressing well, it's been like proven that dressing well gives you a mindset that like, I can do it, I feel great about myself, whereas if you dress like a schlupp, you don't feel as great about yourself. I don't know. I always dress relatively nicely. Actually, I think this speech that I just gave was like the least dressed up I've ever been. Make sure your facts are correct. There was a girl that gave a speech about a topic, about a TV show in my class, and there were facts that she was like, and so this happens at the end of this, and this happens at the end of this, and like at the end of this series, like this is what happens. Except half of them were wrong. And everyone who watches the show is just like, okay, no, that's not what happened. That's quite obviously wrong. And also try and stay away from like TV shows or anything where there's gonna be like a spoiler, because chances are there are gonna be people in the audience that are watching the show, reading the book, want to see the movie, and you're gonna ruin it for them. Don't be ruiner. If you think you messed up, don't say anything. A lot of times when speakers think that they messed up, the audience isn't going to pick up on it. The only reason you know you messed up is because you've practiced it, you've had an idea of what you're going to say, and you didn't directly follow that track. The only time you can't say it is if you get like slightly off topic and you're like, oh, sorry, let me collect my thoughts real quick. That's kind of okay. Otherwise, don't apologize. Have some sort of comic relief in your presentation. It'll relieve some of the tension in the room and within yourself. For example, because I was talking about record labels, I brought up the fact that everyone listens to music, and I said, you know, whether you stream it off of Spotify, buy it off of iTunes, illegally download it, I know, everyone does it. It's not a huge deal anymore. And then I said, you know, some people do actually still go into stores and buy physical copies, believe it or not. And it kind of helped me get into the flow of things. I also, towards the end, because I was talking about like what record labels kind of have to do with things outside of an artist's music, I put in a gif of T Swift dancing horribly awkwardly on Valentine's Day, and it made everyone laugh, and it made me feel better about my presentation. And it also took their eyes off of me for a little bit. If you have anxiety to the point that I do, what I do is I don't make eye contact with people. It looks like I'm making eye contact with people. In reality, I make no eye contact with anyone in the room whatsoever, because that's when I have a panic attack. Look above people's heads. That way you can't see them necessarily looking at you. You know, you pick like 3 spots in the room, so like one off to the side, one in the middle, and then one off to the other side, and you look above people's heads, so it looks like you're making eye contact to people in the audience, but you're not. And that's helpful, because making eye contact with people while I'm giving a speech just makes me lose track of my thoughts and just... My last 2 points kind of relate. The first one is, make sure you're not just talking about something you love. So yes, I love music, and I love the music industry, and I want to work in it. And I talked about something I love in the music industry and something that intrigues me. But I talked about the actual facts, and I talked about, kind of what happens, and I informed them about why record labels get the money that they do. There was someone who gave their speech about some company that they love, and none of their points really related very much, and sorry if my camera just stopped recording for whatever reason. But anyway, so this person, they talked about a company that they really want to work for in the future and why they want to do PR for that company, which is great. But you don't really have any facts to back up what they do and why it's so important for you to do that for the company and why someone else might want to do that for the company. Instead, you talked about how you have a crush on one of the baseball players. That's not really informative. That's just, hey, I like this thing. And there was someone else who talked about like her personal experiences with something, and that's great, but that's your personal experience, and you got your facts from people that you've met, not from like valid sources that have, credibility. Like, yes, that's great, but that is your lone experience. That doesn't necessarily mean that I will have that experience with those kinds of people. Make sure you have facts to back up what you're saying and what you're talking about, because you lose all sense of credibility if you don't. Lastly, make sure your audience can relate to it. So I get that most people don't care about what actually goes on in the music industry. They just care about like, okay, I have good music to listen to. But I tried my hardest to use artists that everyone knows about. I talked about how those artists are kind of changing things. And I talked about how the audience and the publics themselves can affect what record labels and artists do from here on out within the industry. Make it so your audience can relate to it and has a reason to listen to your speech. And again, that has to do with just talking about something that you love. It doesn't make it an informative speech. It doesn't make it like I lost interest because I was like, I can't relate to this whatsoever. I've never spent any time there. I've never even been a fan of that company or that thing. Like, I have no way to relate to this, so I'm just not gonna listen. Nobody wants that. I hope this was at least a little bit helpful in terms of like kind of how you should go about planning a speaking engagement or a presentation for a class, even if it's like you're in high school and you're doing a presentation for a science class. I always had GIFs in my presentations because they're great for comic relief. Everyone loves it when GIFs are in presentations. I love putting GIFs in presentations, which is weird. And I probably shouldn't, but I do. That's kind of it for this week. I hope it was helpful. Bye!